This ummah is always going to be that the iman that we have, the gift that we have been given of La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is not a cheap gift. You don't just get to have it and you don't have to pay its price. So in your personal life, there will be trials and difficulties, and even as an ummah, we're going to suffer trials and difficulties to see what pain are we willing to go through to still hold on to this, to still not let go. And that's actually one of the ways we have to understand difficulty in life. Difficulties that Allah gives to the Muslims, to a believer in his life, or to us as nations, entire countries of Muslims going through trial and difficulty, is Allah Azza wa Jall's way of seeing who wants to hold on to their iman in the hardest of times. Because in those kinds of times, for people whose iman can shake, what happens? How did Allah let this happen to me? What did I do to deserve this? I don't want anything to do with Allah. I prayed to Him, I make dua to Him, I worshipped Him, and look at what happened with my family, look at what happened with me. I don't want to pray anymore. And that reaction is that's exactly the test that Allah Azza wa Jal gave. Who is going to hold on to their iman no matter what? And who's going to still remain hopeful with Allah no matter what? This is why it's called belief in the unseen. It's not just Allah who's in the unseen. Sometimes Allah's mercy is in the unseen. Sometimes Allah's justice is in the unseen. Sometimes Allah's plan is in the unseen. So much of what He does is in the ghaib. What you see in front of you is injustice, it's unfair, it's even cruel. And you look at it and you say, how can this be? I can't appreciate a God who apparently lets people get away with all these crimes. But behind the scenes is actually where our real faith is. We don't believe in what we see. We actually, by the very definition, الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ, we believe in what we cannot see. We believe in what we don't understand. That's in the hands of Allah, and human beings will never have access to it. وَمَا كَانَ اللَّهُ لِيُطْلِعَكُمْ عَلَى الْغَيْبِ. Allah will not be one to inform you what's happening behind the scenes. Allah doesn't owe you an explanation of what's really going on, the actual plans. Before I get to these ayat, just to help you understand, we recite Surah Al-Kahf every Friday. And part of Surah Al-Kahf is the story of the journey of Musa alayhi salam at the end of the surah. And in that story, Allah Azza wa Jal describes 3 different situations which don't make any sense. If you look at it, these people that are fishermen, they have a boat. This is the only way these young men make money. And Khidr goes there and he just pokes a hole in the boat. And he just destroys the boat. And these people, their boat is no good now. They can't make their income anymore. And Musa is like, what did you just do? I came to learn about Allah from you. I was instructed that you're going to bring me closer, and you're going around committing crimes. He kills a boy. If that wasn't bad enough, he kills a boy next. And and then later on, finally, he does something good. He builds a wall, but they're starving. And he's like, these people don't even host you. They're not even kind. Fine, they're not hospitable people. At least if you did this labor for them in the city, you should get paid for it. So none of these scenarios make sense. And what does Allah do? What's the point of these stories? Even though that's not my khutbah today. The point of those stories is there's the seen world, and then there's a curtain from Allah, and behind the scenes is the unseen plan. Those of you that are from the tech industry, there's the front end of the software and there's the code in the back end. Right? There's a source code behind it. Okay? Now what Allah does in this surah is He lifts the curtain just a little bit. And He gives Musa alayhi salam a glimpse through Khidr, of things he couldn't bear. He saw things that were wrong, he couldn't tolerate them. And He says, I'll explain to you now what was really going on behind the scenes. In other words, that's Allah's way of telling us sometimes we see reality that we don't like, that we think is unfair, that is just absolutely wrong. But we still don't understand that Allah has a plan, that Allah's justice is bigger than what we can see. Now coming to these ayat, they begin with Alif Lam Mim. And I was intrigued by that for a long time, because there are many surahs in the Quran that begin with huruf muqatta'at. Qaf, Noon, Kaf, Ha, Ya, Ain, Sad, Alif Lam Mim, Sad, Alif Lam Mim, Ra, Alif Lam Mim itself, Ta, Sin, etc., etc. You'll notice that pretty much all of those surahs, with 2 exceptions, all of those surahs begin with the mention of something about the revelation of Allah. Alif Lam Mim, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ. Alif Lam Mim, Allahu la ilaha illa huwa al-hayyul qayyum, نَزَّلَ عَلَيْكَ الْكِتَابُ. طه ما أنزلنا عليك الكتاب لتشقى. Hamim, Tanzilun min Allah al-Aziz al-Hakim. Every time you have these huruf, following these letters that we don't know the meaning of, only Allah knows, Allah says something about His revelations. And the 2 exceptions are actually Ankabut and Rum. Because here you find Alif Lam Mim, Ahasib an-Nas. There's no mention of the book now. And Surah Al-Rum, Alif Lam Mim, Ghulibat al-Rum. Or rather, Huruf Muqatta'at and Ghulibat al-Rum. The Rome was dominated. It's intriguing. Maybe we'll talk about, Ghulibat al-Rum another time. But for now, today I want to share with you what might be one of the benefits that comes from this unique exception in the Quran. It may be Allah's way of telling us that the purpose, one of the main lessons of the book, one of the main teachings of Quran itself, is to understand how you're supposed to react when you're in a trial. Like in a sense, the Quran has many things. The Quran has many, many, many lessons. And it clarifies many, many realities. But if in one sense you were to be asked, what is the essence practically for me? If I was to really internalize the Quran, what would that practically mean for me? What it would mean is that I understand that when trials happen, they happen because I have Iman. I have to pay the price of Iman. There are going to be difficulties in my life. There's going to be challenges. There are going to be challenges that come to me at the hands of my loved ones. And it may come, that's from the inside. Or within the ummah itself, there will be people that give us problems. And then there will be people from the outside, the enemy, that will give us problems. And both of them are, in a sense, Allah testing us, the grit and the strength of our faith. So what is the statement that Allah makes? أَحَسِبَ النَّاسُ أَن يُتْرَكُوا أَن يَقُولُوا آمَنَّا. Have people assumed that they're just going to be left alone just because they said we've believed? That's the statement. Have people assumed that they will be left alone just because they said that they've believed? وَهُمْ لَا يُفْتَنُونَ. And they're not going to be put to the test? They're not going to be thoroughly tested? Interestingly, you could say يُبْتَلَوْن. They'll be tested, but the word used in the ayah is يُفْتَنُون. And the word يُفْتَنُون comes from the Arabic verb fatana. Fatana is used, or fitna is used in Arabic originally when you have gold that has impurity. And unlike, if you have clothing that has impurity, you can wash it and the impurity comes off. If you have furniture that has an impurity, you can just brush it off. But if gold has impurity, you can't just brush it off. You have to melt the gold at very, very high temperatures. You have to burn this gold and put it under excruciating heat, and only then will the impurities come out. That's the only way to purify gold. It's an intense process. So the gold, its purity is tested by way of very intense heat. And that's when the impurities burn off. The use of that word suggests something. You think you're just going to have faith and you just declared that you're Muslim and you're not going to be put through intense heat? You're not going to be burned like gold is burned? And by the way, in just saying that, Allah's beautiful way of telling us that we are like gold to Him. That the believer is valuable to Him. That you're being put through a hard test because you're just that valuable. You're just that much worth to Allah. Sometimes people think because they're going through a hard time that they're worthless to Allah. Allah doesn't care about me, that's why I'm going through these things. If Allah cared about me, He would have been taking much more care of me. It's the opposite scenario now. It is because you are so valuable to Allah that you must be cleansed this way. وَهُمْ لَا يُفْتَنُونَ. And then Allah says, وَلَقَدْ فَتَنَّ الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ. Much before, we tested people before them too. This is the old history of Allah. You're not the first one to be tested and tried. You're not the first one to be persecuted. You're not the first one to go through a hard time. This has been going on. This is a sunnah of Allah. وَلَقَدْ فَتَنَّ الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ وَلَيَعْلَمَنَّ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ صَدَقُوا وَلَيَعْلَمَنَّ الْكَاذِبِينَ. And this is Allah's way of absolutely exposing. This is how Allah will certainly get to see and expose who of you are actually truthful in your claim. Truthful in what claim? That they believe. Easy to say La ilaha illallah, easy to hold on to it in your heart when hard times come. And that's not the easy part. And so then He will know who's truly lying. You could still be saying La ilaha illallah and be lying. This is Allah's way of testing.